Hi, Kristin Woodson here, Customer Success Manager with DataSet. This is our second video in our Cost Management Best Practices video series. In our last video, we took a look at evaluating log volumes. And now that we have a good idea of the log volumes coming in, what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at our data center pipeline. We'll talk about the difference between sampling and discarding data. We'll also talk about the right cost management tool for your use case and take a look at some additional best practices as well. So let's start in your data center. As your applications and your servers function, it's going to be admitting logs. In this case, it's going to be writing logs to a disk, and you will have the scalar agent most likely installed in your servers. It's going to be looking at a particular file. In this case, it's going to be looking at our log. The agent is going to take everything in that directory and it's going to process that. The way that it processes it is at first we gather the logs. Then if there are any sampling rules, we apply those. And if there are any redaction rules, we apply those. After the redaction step, it's going to shift the data to the DataSet data center. And it's going to be picking up logs via the API. From there, it's going to go through another redaction step called pre-processing or scrubbing. What that's going to do is it's going to allow you to write a centralized set of rules that are going to rewrite the data before it's ultimately parsed. Then the parser allows you to discard the data and rewrite the data. Parsers are very powerful, and it's going to allow you to do both. Once the data is parsed, then it's going to go to the cost management step, which allows you to have a centralized repository for all your discard rules. From there, the data will be available for you to use in the DataSet UI. And you'll also have an option to utilize one of the many integrations, such as Grafana, Google Data Studio, or just grab it at the regular REST API. So that's how the data pipeline works. Now let's talk about sampling. So sampling allows a percentage of designated log events to be sent to the dataset. This can only be done through the agent. Discarding applies to all matching log events. Now sampling's pretty straightforward. You'll be discarding, again, all or a percentage of the log line, and there are some benefits and trade-offs to choosing to sample. The benefit of sampling is that you retain a portion of the log events, so some of them are still visible in DataSet. Discarding can result in more cost savings because you're eliminating all of the matching events. The trade-off here is then you don't have any of the data in DataSet if you need it. So now that we've had a look at the difference between sampling and discarding data, there are 3 places to sample or discard within the product. You can discard within the agent, the parser, and the cost management tool. The majority of these are controlled with regular expression rules. While we can discard data within the agent, the parser, and cost management tool, if you need to sample data, the only place that you can do that will be within the agent. There are some serious benefits to setting your rules within the agent because the data that is sampled or discarded there will not leave your data center. But the trade-off is you will not have a place to centrally manage these rules unless you use some sort of configuration management tools. If you sample here, you will not have to pay for any sort of egress costs. Sampling rules act on the raw message line before any parsing occurs, so sampling rules use text matches on the entire log line. They cannot, for example, match on a specific field. Also, sampling rules are set in the agent configuration at the path level, so you do have the flexibility to set different rules based on different log sources. Parsers give you quite a bit of control over the message field, but they do incur an egress cost. You won't be charged by DataSet for data discarded here, but parsers can get complex pretty quickly, And if you have multiple parsers, it can become difficult to manage which parser configuration file is discarding which data. This is why I like to use discards here to clean up the data before it's ultimately parsed into columns, and not to build rules that I may need to turn on and off. This leads us to the cost management tool. The cost management tool has many benefits, including a UI where you can easily toggle on and off. The trade-off here is that it does not support sampling of data, and it will need to be egressed from your data center. So you will incur an egress cost when using the cost management tool. Now, a few best practices here. So as a best practice, discard rules are used to exclude specific log events which match a filter. We recommend configuring applications, including the scalar agent and other integrations, directly to reduce chatter from more extensive sources. For example, things like multiple hosts or entire log files, as this will minimize the egress costs from your platform. If you are using the cost management tool, a well-defined category will be less prone to discarding logs that you want to keep. You also want to avoid making it too generic. The more specific you are, the better control you'll have of what's discarded and what's not. Since cost management category definitions and discard filters both require you to create search filters, I wanted to share a few search and regular expressions, best practices to keep in mind when working with the cost management and with DataSet in general. So some pointers to optimize search. You want to minimize the use of matches in search queries, match against fields versus free text. Parsing in advance will make it a lot easier when running queries. So we always recommend, parsing when you can. To help simplify regular expressions, you want to minimize the use of wildcards. It's always more advantageous to define the characters you want or don't want versus using a wildcard. And as something additional here to note is regex requires escaping around literal parentheses. This is something that comes up quite often in support tickets. I've listed an example here below for you. Thank you for watching our cost management best practices video. Hopefully you found it helpful and it helped in choosing whether you want to discard data through the agent, parser, or cost management tool. I've created 3 separate videos to walk you through how to discard and sample data in the agent. There's a separate video on how to discard data via a parser, as well as how to discard data using the cost management tool. Please feel free to watch all of those videos or just watch the video that's of interest to you. And if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to us at support@dataset.com. I look forward to seeing you in the next video where we look at discarding and sampling data via the agent.